I'm here with my amazing co-host and certified culture engineer, Terry Mays. So today we're going to be talking about resilient culture. Leaders have a responsibility to create a resilient culture. It is really very, very important. We're going to be looking at two aspects of leadership resilience. One is cognitive resilience. The other is emotional resilience. And we'll get right into it with a share and a definition on the cognitive side. So let me share screen. Okay, we'll go over here. Okay, so we talk about cognitive resilience. We're starting with this definition right here by our company: to bounce back from adverse situations by employing coping strategies that enable the leader to stay mentally focused, calm, and clear-headed so they can navigate around or through crises. And so I think that's super important, actually. People are looking to the leaders, especially when times are tough. And leaders need to employ these coping mechanisms. I certainly always did, even when there were minor problems. People come like, oh my God, such and such happened, and you could overreact to it. But if you can put it in perspective, you can very, very quickly be that calming influence or force in that moment, right? Because you've got to stay clear-headed. It's really, really important that you do that.
Yeah, because we're hardwired for survival. So if our brain senses that threat, then it puts our brains and our thought patterns in survival mode. And now you're no longer thinking like with your rational brain. You're thinking, how can I survive? How can I get out of this as quickly as possible? And you're making decisions that may not be rational. You know, it's very important to stay in that calm state of mind in order to be able to think rationally. You don't want to be impulsive,
Right.
often just responding based on what you're seeing and not getting all the information. You don't want to overreact. So you need, as a leader, to be able to hear information that may be jarring to you, but you need to be able to hear it and keep in a state of calm. Because when you're calm, then people around you are going to be calm. But if you're flying off the handle with your hair on fire, then the people around you are going to feel that, and then their hair is going to be on fire, and now everybody's running around like a
Right.
chicken with the head cut off. You don't want that. You want people to stay in that calm state of mind so that they can actually come up and get great ideas and actually think rationally and come up with some logical solutions instead of just, this irrational thought that happens. Often when your emotions get triggered, you're not thinking clearly. So that's why
Yeah.
people tell you all the time not to make decisions when you're emotional, because you're not thinking clearly, you're not thinking rationally, you're only in survival mode at that point.
Yeah, I think it's just super important that the leader of all people, especially the executives, they're able to be that source of strength for the organization. And they've got to understand that, the stress is affecting physiologically, just like you said, Tara. And that in order for them to stay sharp and be on top of their game, they've got to find out ways to cope with this, to put things in perspective, to calm down. And they need to spot those warning signs like that emotion coming on and start employing coping strategies right away, because people are going to be looking to them to say, hey, wow, what does this mean for us as an organization? And they've got to maintain that cognitive resilience, because only then can they show up in the best way possible to the organization. Super important.
Yeah, this is where good, strong mental health comes into play, which is why
Yeah.
it's so important for employers to offer some sort of mental health resource to their people, because you never know what triggers a different person. Each person is different. So you don't know what triggers you. You don't know what may put you in that state where you feel overstressed and overworked, where your brain feels overtaxed. You don't want people to stay in that state for very long. I know that there are times when you will be in a situation where you feel like your mental capacity is exasperated, like you have nothing left to give.
Yeah.
I've been in those cases where you've worked hard and it's just a short period, and that's to be expected. There are going to be times where you have to do things that aren't quite so pleasant. but you do it for the sake of the work that you're doing and you want things to be successful. But you don't want people in that state for very long because it's a very unhealthy state, not just
Yeah.
for your mental health, but your physical health as well. And we've talked about that impact that stress can have on your body, on your heart, and on your mind. So you do want to make sure that people have the resources that they need in order to be resilient. So they've got those coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Do know how to do things like deep breathing is a great example. Just taking time to take deep breaths when you're in those stressful situations. There are different types of breathing techniques that you can use when you feel your body getting stressed. For me, I feel it in my shoulders. They start getting tense, and
They do, huh?
shoulders are in my ears. My neck starts to get really tense. I'll get kind of queasy in my stomach, depending on what kind of situation stress it is. All of those are just signals to me that my body is overstressed and I need to de-stress as quickly as possible. I
Yeah.
need to do some deep breaths. I need to get up, go take a quick walk, calm my nerves, go and, look at some funny videos on social
Yeah.
media, or just take a break and walk away for a minute and then come back when you're in a much more calm state of mind. Because the
Yeah.
people are going to be as stressed as the leader is. So if the leader is stressed, they're going to pass that stress on to the people, and then they're going to be burnt out because they're overstressed all the time.
Yeah, it's amazing. Taking a walk can be so simple, such a simple solution to get out on a beautiful day for 10 minutes if you have it. Pick up the pace a little, burn some calories. You're going to burn some of that stress out of your body. Another breathing technique you could do is to breathe in 4 seconds and breathe out over a period of 7 seconds, but breathe out in a way that you can hear it. Like,
Yeah.
so you hold it and then you breathe out and
Yeah.
do that 4 or 5 times. That works actually. It's a
Yeah.
simple
It
technique,
does.
but
It
it
really
actually
does.
does work.
It really does. Even, just doing that a couple of times, you'll be surprised at how much your body starts to calm down just from doing it a couple of times. And then if you practice those breathing techniques throughout the day, you can kind of keep yourself in this calm state of mind so that now you're not just reacting to every little thing that happens. As a leader, you really cannot be emotionally driven. You really do have to stay in that space where you're logically driven, where you're making decisions
Got to
based on
manage the emotions.
good. Yeah, you got to manage the emotions. You got to make some decisions based on good, sound logic. You cannot just fly off the handle and expect for the team to be able to respond and to drop what they're doing and everybody go do this. There are times when that's necessary, but that cannot be the norm. That cannot be your normal way of leading and operating.
Well,
There
leader,
are
uh,
there are emergency situations all the time,
oh,
but you
absolutely,
have
stuff
to
comes
be
up.
able to balance that out because the human brain staying in that state where it's, that reptilian brain that's looking to actually get out of there as quickly as possible or fight back. Those are just states that you don't want people in for very long because it's just so unhealthy.
It's unhealthy and unproductive, and people have to have that work-life balance. You don't want to be drained of your real emotional energy as you're going into one of these situations. So it's important
Yeah.
to work out and get exercise so that you're always generating plenty of energy. It's important to eat the right food. It's important to manage stress on an ongoing basis and not let it build up so that you're stressed out, that cortisol in your blood takes over. And it's important to really have work-life balance. Get your mind out of work. It's one of those things that really helps you when you need to dig deep emotionally to overcome some stressful situation. You're going to have some reserves, and
Yeah.
people make the mistake of getting stressed out, and then they're caught off guard by one of these situations.
Yeah. Which is why you've got to make sure
Mhm.
that when you have those stressful situations, you also have the balance of fun. And we've talked about fun in the
Yeah,
workplace before, but this is how those two things play against each other. You have to be able to balance out the tough times with some good
yeah,
times. So that means maybe one day everybody comes in and you take an ice cream social Or, you have half a day where you just give people the day off and you go out and maybe you go to a park or have an outdoor activity where everybody can just kind of play some games and relax.
Yep.
Has to be led by the leader. You can't wait for that to happen organically. You really do have to plan for those types of activities to counter that stress. This is hugely important. You cannot just have a high stress work environment because it becomes hostile when it's like that all the time. And people are going to run away from that. They're trying to get away as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So I think we should move on to emotional resilience. And,
Yes.
once the leader has really adapted, they use these coping mechanisms in order to actually bring themselves back up emotionally so that they're ready to present themselves to the organization. Now we get down to emotional resilience. And let me share a screen again quickly. And so emotional resilience is the ability of a leader to adapt to stressful situations and crises by balancing negative emotions with positive ones in order to remain a source of emotional strength for the organization. And so that emotional resilience is the ability to keep the organization motivated and productive during stressful, demanding times. So failure and missteps don't prevent it from reaching its goals. The leader is the source of emotional strength. And I think most leaders don't actually understand that's one of their roles. They are a source of optimism. They're a source of fun. They're a source of direction in terms of strategy and where things are going. But they're that source of emotional resilience because an organization can get down. And they've got to be able to find good in difficult situations and inject emotional support when things go wrong. They're not just the leader, they're the power plant. People feed off their energy, both good and bad. And so it's super, super important that they realize they've got to feed positive energy out to the organization so that the organization is emotionally resilient. They've got to craft that. They've got to energize it, regardless of the size of your team. And if you're running a small team on your way to becoming a person that's going to run a big organization or company one day, you've got to build those skills as early as possible. Every one of those moments where people are suddenly stressed out or worried, that is an ability. That's an opportunity to build this capability for yourself to practice.
Yeah.
People,
You want your leader to be able to bounce back and also help organization, help the team to bounce back. You need people with high EQ, so they're also and self-aware, so they're aware of how they're feeling, but they're also aware of how the people are feeling. So you need not just leaders that have knowledge of the organization, that institutional knowledge. That's one piece of it. But you've also got to have somebody that's sensitive enough and that's got high enough EQ that they can assess the situation and understand that people are overworked. They need to be able to sense that in the organization. You can't wait for an engagement survey to tell you how people are feeling in the organization.
oh God, what a disaster. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be able to sense that on a daily, weekly basis so that you can adjust. You
You
want
do.
to be able to adjust quickly. You want to be able to address the stressful situations, that elephant in the room, whatever it is, whatever's causing people to be overworked and overstressed. You need to be able to address that quickly. And you don't want to wait and wait for people to get so burnt out to where they just don't care. Because when people stop caring, then they stop doing their very best. They really just go into that mode of, I'll do what is required of me and nothing more.
Yeah.
You really don't want people working like that. You
No.
want
Yeah.
to feel like there's some sense of ownership, that they are excited to be there, that they want to bring their best self to work. They want to do their very best and
Yeah.
not just give you the bare bones minimum.
Yeah. So no question. I mean, as a leader, you've got to put the organization up. You've got to manage your organization called org energy. You've got to understand passion and mood have to be managed. You've got to take ownership of it. You should do it as quickly as possible. You should be in touch with the organization, like Terry says. You should understand when the organization is getting emotionally down. Could be a big situation. Could be something that's just building over time. But you've got to manage the organization's emotional resilience. When it's down, you got to pick it up. Bring the vibe back up. And you've got to understand your tone of voice, what your vibe is, what your expression is, because mood's contagious and it's super important. So we got that background noise. How weird.
Yes, it is very weird.
Very weird. Bad connection here or something.
Yeah.
Well,
Good thing we're almost at the end.
I think we're wrapping up here.
Yeah.
This weird noise has crept into this. It's coming out of nowhere. But anyway, listen, we're here every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern Time with another show. This is our 18th episode on how to increase workforce productivity. Nothing matters more than that. 47 other CEOs think 40% of the work that people do in their organization is wasted productivity. It's actually much higher if you study it, to be honest with you. But that's a good enough number to run with. It's a huge opportunity. 40 cents of every dollar payroll is going to waste in most companies, producing nothing. And that's the reality of the situation today. So you need to work on increasing workforce productivity. Leaders need to learn these human factors of productivity, these human skills. They've got to employ them to run a better, more productive organization. So you should tune in next week. We're going to do another episode on how to increase workforce productivity, this time on agility. So resilience and agility are two things that go hand in hand. And we'll talk about that in the next episode. If you enjoyed that, we hope to see you there. Take care.
Yes.